it eventually got to the point where I just said, you know what? I want to come work with you.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm lying. Hold on, let me back up. I was kind of put in a position to where, I was terminated, and it obviously wasn't my decision. But it's something that I recognize with a lot of women that I sit down in front of is they don't feel empowered or even that it's necessary for them to understand what's going on with their money. And so women lose that glow, or we lose that shine. It's because our cups are empty, and we have to learn to step away from situations to reset and rediscover who we are. So when you talk about activating it within yourself, it's your responsibility. It's no one else's responsibility. Do you have the mindset that when an opportunity comes your way that you're saying, oh my gosh, this is too big. You're focusing on all the reasons as to why you can't do it or why you shouldn't have the opportunity. Or do you have the mindset of, okay, that opportunity comes like, you know what? If I'm being honest, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but guess what? I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. Absolutely.
Welcome to Behind the Spotlight podcast, where your story matters. I'm your host, Danielle Jade Martin, and I'm on a mission to empower and educate you towards your greatness. On this podcast, we go behind the scenes to shed light on the experiences and perspectives of individuals making waves in their fields. Also, on this show, my goal is to help you learn ways to turn your thoughts into action. You'll also learn from individuals who share personal experiences and actionable steps to create the life you desire. So get ready to get inspired and grow stronger. I encourage you to open up your heart and be ready to receive. Now let's dive into today's episode. We're going to jump right in. Stacia, welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah?
I am feeling very good. Feeling amazing.
So we're all dressed up because we just finished our photo shoot today. So I'm loving it. You still look beautiful.
I'm definitely not dressed up. You pulled one on me, but it's okay.
Okay, I had a t-shirt on earlier and she's like, okay, are you going to wear that? And I'm like, yeah. But I just got hot. So I was just like, okay, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, you had me sold. It's my favorite t-shirt. I'm going to wear it. And here I am. And just like, so we're going to make it work.
But look how beautiful she still looks in a t-shirt. Anyways.
I'm trying, y'all. I'm trying.
Okay, so in case many people don't know, by the time they listen to this episode, they get to see who our keynote speaker is for the Rise and Thrive conference. First of all, thank you so much for saying yes to this opportunity.
Absolutely.
I always like to share or give the foundation of, how we met and how our paths crossed. And she doesn't know, but I've actually been like stalking her for a little bit. And I was just like, I need to meet this Black woman.
Aww.
Like, I really do. And so just by the grace of God, we were able to coordinate and spend a whole day together.
We did.
That was really fun.
Yes.
And because you made me feel like home. Coming from Houston, I'm not, I don't know, I still miss that like home feeling and, just capacity. And so when I was like in your home and like just watching all your kids like go everywhere, you're like, this is the loud house. Yeah. I was like, no, I love this because I'm like the youngest of 6. So I'm like, I love this. Like, this is beautiful. But what really inspired me was learning your story and how you got to this place. So you are a co-founder and wealth advisor of Williams Financial Group.
Yes.
You are partnering with your husband in this financial firm, which is amazing.
Thank you.
But I want to know, and for the audience to know, how you got to this place. Did you ever see yourself getting here?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that I saw myself as a financial advisor. I actually, growing up, I wanted to be 3 things. I wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, or a model. So let's just start with modeling. I was in school at the time, and I would literally be in the middle of class, and my agent would call and say, you need to leave. Like we have a shoot. It was in Kansas City, it's not a huge market. So when you get those opportunities, you really kind of have to jump on them. And it just was, and he was very sassy, and that wasn't going to work. And I didn't see myself leaving Kansas City for the very reason of what you said, as far as being away from home. So that was out. And then I said, okay, well, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a surgeon, heart surgeon. And Those biology classes, yeah.
They add up.
Well, let's just say I wasn't adding up. I was subtracting.
She was like,
Yeah, so we had to get out of there. We barely made it out of there.
Oh
so I said, well, yeah, so that didn't work. But then eventually I took on criminal justice as my major.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, okay, being an attorney, well, after I finished undergrad, then I decided to go work in a law firm because I wanted to kind of get used to the atmosphere and get my foot in the door, build relationships. Corporate law is different. Attorneys, they are a different level of intensity, is how I'll describe it. And it is a lot of politicking. And so my personality is very straightforward. It's very, say what you mean what you say.
Yeah.
And that just didn't, translate well over into that industry. So eventually I stayed there on the administration side. And then I eventually went into marketing, which I absolutely loved. And so after I left the law firm, then I went to work for a local company, a candy company, Russell Stover's. And I went into their marketing department. Yeah. And the whole time, my husband, George, he was building Williams Financial Group. Mm-hmm. We had founded it. It was founded in 2013. Yeah. And so he was working on really kind of like building this dream. And in the space he was in, he actually started off in the Medicare space, insurance. Yeah. And so he was doing well, but he required him. He was a one-man team. And so I would help him, with as many administrative duties as I possibly could when I would get off work from a full-time job and then, come try to help him with what he needed. So it eventually got to the point where I just said, you know what? I want to come work with you. Yeah. Well, actually, I'm lying. Hold on, let me back up.
You're like, it wasn't that easy, actually.
It wasn't that. In between Russell Stover and the law firm, I was kind of put in a position to where, I was terminated. And obviously wasn't my decision. Mm-hmm. And even though I didn't aspire to be an attorney, I wanted to climb the administrative side. Yeah. And that was my goal. I wanted to become higher up. Well, things didn't pan out that way. So I didn't have a job. And so I started working alongside George, but it wasn't my choice. Right. I was there because it was the only option. Mm-hmm. We probably almost got divorced so many times because he fired me so many times. Because
it's hard working with your spouse.
The hardest thing.
Honey,
it is.
I'm getting exposure.
It is the hardest thing. Yeah. And so in doing so, eventually we just made the decision that this is not going to work. Mm-hmm. Like we were crossing over each other's lanes and blah, blah, blah. So I did go, and that's when I took the position with Russell Stover. Yeah. Being in that space after having the freedom of time, I did enjoy actually working alongside George, and I enjoyed like the freedom of time. I was able to get to my kids if I needed to. Yeah. It was something different. And I missed that when I went into Russell Stover. And long and short, I came back to George with my tail between my legs a few years later. And I said, okay, I think I'm ready to try this again, if you will have me. He was a little bit reluctant because, again, it caused a lot of disruption in our marriage, us working together. Mm-hmm. But I told him, I said, this is me saying I'm ready. This is not me being put in, feeling like I'm forced in the position to have to work with you. Right. And so he accepted me back. And then I went into a support role. Yeah. So initially I started off just behind the scenes supporting him. And then I eventually, as I would sit in his meetings, when he would meet with women, I noticed that there was a kind of a disconnect. Yeah. He would be talking, and he's very good. His grandmother, he was very close to his grandmother. Mm-hmm. So he knows how to work with women, but it just was kind of a disconnect. And in being a disconnect, I started finding myself advocating for that woman. Mm-hmm. If he would make a comment or if he would, use a term and she kind of looked a little confused, I would catch those looks and I would pause him And I would ask her,
Right.
do you really understand what he's saying? And it almost was like it was appreciated when I would do that. And so the more I did that, the more I kind of started coming into that advising role because I was insurance licensed at the time.
Right.
But eventually, as we, again, grew the company, we took on other industries. So it wasn't just insurance. We then went into investments. So in 2020, I got my Series 65. I became investment licensed and became an all-out like advisor for women.
How did that make you feel?
You know,
like knowing it took like just time and effort to go get this license, like you actually put in the work, you know, it wasn't like you walked into your husband's firm and said, okay, where's my position? You know what I mean? Like you still took time to go educate yourself.
I did. I have never grown. I wasn't taught to grow up with a sense of entitlement. And even though that was my husband, I still respected the fact that this was his dream. This is his vision. And I knew that if it didn't work or if I didn't do my part, it could be a possibility of bringing failure to our doorstep. And that was something that I didn't want. I'm not a failure. I'm not a person who likes to fail. I'm very competitive. And so it was a lot of emotions that came with it at the time, but it was well worth it. And the more I've gotten situated or settled in my seat, every single time I sit down and I'm able to solve a problem for a woman client, I know that, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. So it was a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings.
Let's go into your passion for women. Just watching you in the firm, you have women events. You're very, if you pay attention to your social media, you're very focused on not only educating women in financing, but also in marriage and relationships and friendships as a whole person. Which is what I love the most about you. But what is it about women and their finances that we do not fully understand? Because there is a gap there. And I can speak on behalf of myself, like growing up with a little of like a poverty mindset of like, maybe we can't afford that. And then kind of like slowly believing that maybe you will never be able to afford that, but also understanding you have the power to educate yourself to figure out how you can attract the things that you want. So how do you help women educate themselves on how to get more comfortable with their finances?
I think you just said a word that I think is it's very important. It really kind of helps to mindset is the word. And I don't care if you're man, woman, boy, or girl. We have to make a decision that our mindset, we have to change our mindset, change what we've been taught about money, how we feel about money. And I think that that's probably the hardest thing to overcome because as women, traditionally, we weren't in the household, we didn't handle the finances. We might have paid bills, but the husband went to work, earned the money, and then brought the money, to the wife to pay the bills. And sometimes the wife was allowed for an allowance, but women now coming into today's time have evolved into we work. 40% of U.S. households are, women are the breadwinners. And so it is complete that our situation at home our role at home is completely changed. However, the mindset stayed the same or it's something that I recognize with a lot of women that I sit down in front of is they don't feel empowered or even that it's necessary for them to understand what's going on with their money. And so when you talk about how do we help or what's the first thing that I address is mindset. In my educational workshop, I tell those women, you are here tonight. You belong here. You're supposed to be here. This is your seat at the table. And so take your notebooks out and get ready to take notes.
I mean, where do you think that came from as you were taking this approach towards women? Because even when I saw you present at the church a couple months ago, it was just like watching you not just speak at people, but helping people understand like a framework. This is like a step-by-step on how you actually manage your finances and get comfortable with it. Because you're right. I think we are taught to take a back seat and be like, you know, my partner's going to take care of it. My man's going to take care of it. It's fine. Yeah. But even for me, it's like, as I'm growing, it's like I'm getting confronted with all of the things that was in my past financially that now is coming up. And it's like, oh, I have to actually understand what this means. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so for you, where do you think that framework or that mindset came from for you to say, you know what, I'm not going to just talk to you about your finances, but I'm going to take a step back and help you understand who you are as a whole?
I think it came from my story, just knowing where I've been, where I've come from. So I'm the daughter of 2 pastors, but my dad's ministry growing up, my parents' ministry wasn't attractive. It wasn't, show up to Sunday's best. It wasn't a big, beautiful building, that I walked into on Sundays. It was actually a very small storefront building, and most of our congregation was homeless. And on Saturday evenings, in fact, me and my siblings, we would have an assembly line and we would put together sack lunches. And we would, the next morning, early Sunday morning, we would get up, go load up in the church van, and my dad would take us downtown to distribute those lunches to homeless people. Right. And in doing so, he would then invite them to come to church with us. And I'll never forget, as a little girl, it was a lot of memories and strong smells, but stronger stories. Some people, what I realized about people, especially homeless people, is some of them didn't plan on being there. Yeah. In fact, it looked like what their lives previously looked like. They didn't even know at times, sometimes, how they'd even gotten there. But they were there. And I learned to see people in a different way. And when you see someone homeless, it's human nature to, back up from them, for you to go the other way, or for you to, the average person to experience some type of fear or, intimidation by them, by their presence. Yeah. I learned not to see them like that. I learned that there's a story behind every single person. Every single person has their own story. For sure. And if we don't ask questions and we don't hear the why as to how you got here, then it's easy to fall into a seat of judgment. And so in working with women, and that's my approach, is, okay, what is your story? Let me understand how you got into the situation, whether it's a great situation or it's a not so great situation. Yeah. Let me understand. And then we're going to educate, because I always tell clients, I give recommendations, you make decisions. Yeah. I believe in options. Even when I'm going shopping, I like options. I can like a shoe and I will get black and brown because I want that option, right?
You never know. You might need both of them.
Exactly, at some point. And so that's what helped me to really advocate. My desire is to understand who is sitting in front of me, so that I can then educate, and then I can then problem solve with them as a partnership almost.
That's so good. I'm really excited to share something really special happening at the 2024 Rise and Thrive Conference. We're adding a charitable component to the empowering experience this year called the Empower the Period Donation Drive. It's an opportunity for all of us to help young ladies with their menstrual cycle by providing them with these essential items that they need. This component of the conference is a collaborative effort with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Topeka to support their teen center. Now, as we come together to celebrate and support women at the conference, we also want to shine a light on an important issue: period poverty. It's a challenge that many women face around the world and right here in our own community. So by joining us in this drive, you can make a real difference with us. For more information and ways to donate, you can simply donate online or bring your products to the event on August 16th and 17th. For more information on how to help this cause, head over to our website at daniellejmartin.com/empower the period. That's daniellejmartin.com/empower the period. Now let's empower women together. Okay, so I loved how you said that keyword understanding because it's so funny. My partner always says like, seek to understand rather than trying to be like misunderstood or something like that. I probably butchered it, but it's something about like seek understanding first before you're trying to be understood, because it's like, I think you can learn a lot about, like you said, an individual by asking who they are and why they are the way they are based on just where they've been and based on their decisions. And so I think that's the beauty about people, is that they were created for whoever they were called to be.
Absolutely.
And so for you, why would you say that you were created?
I think that I enjoy serving. I enjoy providing a service to people. I enjoy helping people realize their self-worth. It's funny because at home, so we have 5 kids and I am I create independent human beings. Okay? Yeah. And I don't want anybody dependent on me. Yeah. So we have a 4-year-old. The ages range from 4 to 23 years old is our youngest, or is our oldest. But even with that, I want to teach those kids how to do for themselves as quickly as possible. And not because I don't enjoy being their mother or because I don't enjoy doing things for them. But the reality of it is that there's a whole world out there waiting for them. And if they don't learn, early on and get experience, so it goes back to that saying of you teach, your children how to fish, you don't fish for them. Right. I believe that I was created to help people recognize the power within themselves, that it's been there, but maybe they didn't have the right things, or the right people pulling it out of them. So
yes. Okay. You just said the key thing that I say all the time. I just got chills, but recognizing that the power is within you. Yeah. And so I really speak this to the mountaintops about understanding that the power is within, because in the culture that we live in now, everyone's trying to search for things outside of them. And that's what leaves us empty, because we want, to be seen, we want to be heard, and all of these external factors really always leave us empty. And I'm just speaking from experience, because I know what it's like to seek for things outside of you. And then that's why you end up depressed or anxiety, or feeling like you're not enough. Yeah. And it was the moment that God was you need to just be still and understand, one, seek me, seek first of me. That changed my whole perspective of life.
And I did a podcast an episode last week when I interviewed a holistic doctor. Yeah. And she brought up an amazing point, because we were actually talking about the subject of marriage. And I get a lot of pushback on our podcast because, I talk about the uncomfortable stuff. Though. I'm not gonna lie. I would like to think that it's very true. Yeah. But it's what people don't want to hear. But one of the things that she said is, that it's not your responsibility to make your spouse happy. And so I said, let me let that settle. Yeah. And she said, it's not. She said, wouldn't that be a job? Wouldn't that be exhausting if you felt like you had to show up and make somebody happy? Wow. It is our own responsibility, our own. Happiness is ours. And it's our responsibility when you go into, especially a marriage, our responsibility is to add happiness, add to their happiness. Yeah. But you cannot create happiness for someone. Yeah. And so in the culture that we live in today, a lot of people, they are looking for happiness in things. They're looking for something to make them happy. Yeah. When if you don't dig down inside and if you don't do a self-reflect, or you don't figure out how to make yourself happy, it's going to be a rough time in this world. And so not looking for the things of this world to make us happy, but to find happiness within ourselves. I mean, that's power within us. I have the power to make myself happy. I have the power to make myself feel sad. I have the power to make myself feel angry. And I think that a lot of times we want to give that power away. And then in giving that power away, we then become victims to the situation because we've given our power away.
Wow.
If somebody makes you upset, you upset me, and this is why, and we learn to communicate and talk through, that's taking our power back because you now put it out there for them to correct, and you have peace. You've let it go.
Yeah.
But I think that holding on to, just looking for that validation or that affirmation in people.
Yes.
To me, that's where a lot of internal issues where they come from.
That's so good. Okay, I'm over here smiling because I remember, thinking back to our conversation in the car, I can't remember who asked you, but I think the question was, what sets your soul on fire? Do you remember that question in the car?
No, not off, but yeah.
But we were talking about I think around the essence of what makes you happy. Yeah. And so even around that question, that was a question even recently I had to keep asking myself because you were right. I was constantly just in a space, especially in high school, looking at boys and men and looking at just people around us to make us happy. Yeah. But instead of asking yourself, what fulfills you? Yeah. And so I think that has been the conversation for me lately, the last couple of years, because when God put me on this path, on this new journey of you're not going to be a news anchor anymore. You're called to just really speak and do podcasts, and still trying to figure that out. But when all of those things and titles were ripped away from me, I was literally forced to look in the mirror. Yeah. And so the question around all of my episodes was who are you becoming? Yeah. And which led me to even this year's mission of activating that mission and activating your personal mission, because we know missions for organizations and businesses, but when it comes to our own calling and purpose, we don't know what that is. I agree. And so it's how would you encourage someone to find that?
Well, and I think that you just hit the nail on the head when you said that we are willing to, especially as women, we're willing to give out and we overgive and we run our tanks dry. And I think that that's the first things first is we have to stop being all things for everybody else. And then put ourselves last. I know that. And I was actually raised, God first, others second, and then yourself last. But I think that's not literally because you can only give out what you put into yourself. And so if you are not intentionally refueling or, pouring back into your own cup, whatever that looks like, then what are you really giving out? And I think that when women lose that glow or we lose that shine, it's because our cups are empty and we have to learn to step away from situations to reset and rediscover who we are. So when you talk about activating it within yourself, it's your responsibility. It's no one else's responsibility. Yeah. And as you said, things were stripped away from you and you felt okay, wait, I really have to look in the mirror and see this stripped down, raw version of me. Yeah. What do I do with it? But I often believe that, because I'm strong in my faith, is that God will set you on the backside of the mountain in order to get your attention. And so if we are constantly distracted by things, or we layer on, all these things, and they're distractions, they eventually become distractions. And sometimes we lose sight of what the original purpose or what the original mission was supposed to be in the first place. Wow. And so when you talk about activating your mission, first of all, find out, ask God, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing here? And I remember when I went through, when I was terminated from the law firm, I felt like I had lost my sense of purpose. I didn't even know what my purpose was supposed to be, but I felt like I lost it. I lost a job. This was a job, my dream job, or it was a job somewhere I could see myself growing. Right. And then when it was taken away, I'll never forget, I called my dad and I was in tears. Oh and it was just a random day after it happened. It wasn't the day that it happened. It was just, some time after. And I was in tears, and I said, I don't even feel like being here. Like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, I was devastated.
Yeah.
And little did I know that if God had not removed me from that position, if I had not been taken out of that position, out of that comfort zone, or where I saw myself going, I wouldn't be sitting here on this couch with you in this space today.
Wow.
And so, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. If something is happening or something's being removed from our life, trusting God and saying, okay, well, I don't know why. And I don't care if that's a person. I don't care if that's a job. I don't care if it's a home. I don't care what it is.
Right.
But taking the moment to pause and say, okay, that's gone now. What am I missing? What am I supposed to be seeing? We have to be able or willing and open to not get stuck in our pain, not get stuck in our heartache, not get stuck in, I wanted having a temper tantrum. I wanted it to happen this way. But say, okay, what's the lesson I'm supposed to be learning right now, right here and right now? Because until you learn that lesson, guess what? You're going to be sitting yourself right there.
Yeah.
So the sooner you learn the lesson, the sooner that you're able to move forward.
Right. How old were you when you lost that job?
I was, Gabby was born in 2010. And so I was, I want to say, I think I was like 29.
29.
Yeah, I was 29. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So 29, you're about to reach 30.
Yep.
Your life gets turned upside down.
Yeah.
And I think about the amount of women that I know in that same position till this day that don't know how to get back on track or on track. At the age of 29, women have kids at that time.
Yeah.
And so they're thinking like, how do I provide? How do I move forward? How do I move forward when everything and everyone around me is operating in their purpose? It looks like it. So then they start to fold because they start to compare. And then there's that space of like comparison of feeling like, well, they got their thing, they're thriving, they're married, they have kids, they have everything together. What would you say to the person that may feel like they've lost it all? How do you get back on track?
The first thing I would say, and I think it might come across as a little harsh, but get over it. Get over it. And when I say get over it, again, I don't mean to be insensitive because things are painful. And I've experienced loss. I've experienced loss in a job, in a car, in cars, homes, in even children. I've miscarried before. So I know what it feels like to lose. And in those moments of loss, I didn't want to hear get over it. But the reality of it is when I look back at it now, staying stuck, it didn't help. Staying stuck. I was just, as you just said, you see all these things, these people moving around you, and then you become envious, and then you become bitter. Staying stuck, you're allowing things to attach to you that can become unhealthy. And so when you talk about, like, again, seeing the why am I here? Why is this happening? Why is it, and I was always, one thing I can say, I can speak to is even when I was going through my storm, I was always clapping it up for the next person. I have a very good friend at the time. She was on the rise. She was essentially, she had come through her storm and she was now on the rise. And here I was feeling like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know how, but I made sure that every single time she called me to be in a happy space because I know that she needed that. And I wasn't going to overshadow her moment of happiness, bring down, deflate her happy cloud because I wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I learned how to celebrate people even in the thick or the midst of my own trials, my own storms. And I think that within itself, God saw that. And I think God acknowledges that and blesses that. And so that's one thing I will say is that I never looked at other people and said, well, why did they get it? Why did I feel it internally? Probably. Yeah, absolutely. But when they had their moment, when I was in front of them, I praised them. And my issue was never with them. It was always, it was an internal issue. So that goes back to, we make ourselves feel a certain way. So it's not that you're upset that, your friend got that promotion and here you just lost your job.
Right.
learn how to celebrate people, even when you are on the lowest of lowest levels of life.
Wow.
You have to learn how to celebrate and clap your way out of it.
So good. Oh my God, that's so good. I'm like, you left me speechless. I'm thinking about just also certain people that maybe do need to hear that, like the space of just like really get over it. But I think it's because people are afraid to say what's on their mind.
Yeah.
Because we are in a very sensitive time for some reason. It's like you can't say everything. People are going to start crying. People are going to start quitting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole thing.
It is.
Right.
It is.
But that's one side of the spectrum. But also on this other side of the spectrum, I see many women that are like hungry, they're on the rise, they're ready to like go after their business, their life, like they're ready to accelerate to a whole different level. And it's like contagious.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to be over here where people are clapping for other women. They're like, girl, you better do that thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Even though it's not my time yet, like I'm just going to be here preparing. Right. So how do you encourage someone to prepare even though it's not their time?
I heard a saying that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, or somewhere along that.
Yeah.
But essentially, you are who you hang out with. Birds of a feather flock together. So yes, it's going to hurt when you haven't arrived. Even in being in this industry, being in this space, I remember going to one of the first conferences with Advisors Excel and walking into that room and even hearing the numbers that advisors were doing.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, this is a little bit different. I'm like,
yes.
But one of the things I had, I had 2 decisions.
Yeah.
I could either shrink in those rooms and I could, be like, oh my gosh, this is, and I could shy away from it. Or I can say, okay, I'm gonna clap for you now,
right?
And know that one day somebody's gonna be sitting in this seat clapping for me.
I'm coming.
And so I think it goes back to mindset. What type of mindset do you have? Do you have the mindset that when an opportunity comes your way, that you're saying, oh my gosh, this is too big. You're focusing on all the reasons as to why you can't do it or why you shouldn't have the opportunity. Or do you have the mindset of, okay, that opportunity comes like, you know what? If I'm being honest, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but guess what? I'm going to figure it out. Yeah. Absolutely. So it goes back to the mindset. Are you are you shrinking or are you willing to rise to the occasion? And if you're constantly shrinking, find out why you're shrinking. I went through a period of time where I was starting to experience success. And when I would get around certain people, I would get, if I was out with somebody else would come up and give me a compliment. And instead of me owning that compliment and saying, thank you so much, and being proud or grateful for that compliment, I would shrink next to the person that was because I didn't want them to feel like I was doing too much, or I didn't know how to own my success. Wow. Well, the more I started to shrink, I began to start asking myself, why am I doing that? Yeah. Why do I feel like that? It's because the people that I was around, I was in the wrong crowd. I was in the wrong room. And so the minute I started to change my room, that when that compliment was given, before I could say thank you, that person that I was with, it was saying thank you on my behalf, or like absolutely agreeing. And like,
that's so good.
That felt different. And that's when I knew I was in the right room. And it's not about, an ego. It's not about, stroking the ego or anything. But if you are doing amazing things, own that. Because if you're not willing to own it, why should anybody else be willing to acknowledge it or be appreciative of it? Yeah. So I think that when you speaking to people or into women who are right now, they're in that valley of their life, hang in there and celebrate what's to come, not where you're at right now. Learn where you're at. Yeah. Like be learning. Don't sit still. Learn. Learn what mistakes did I make. If it's a financial valley, what did I do to financially get here? What mistake did I make? What could I have done differently? And start to educate yourself on what other options you could have had and what other choices you could have made, so that when you get back into this position or when you pull yourself up or when you gather yourself and you're on your way back up,
right.
you know you won't make those same mistakes again. That's what valleys are for. They're resting places to me to study, to learn. What can I do differently?
Wow, that's so good.
Yeah.
That was for me. It was. Thank you.
I
received that. I receive all of it. Okay, as we come to a close, your passion for women, as you are preparing for this event, what are you hoping that people take away? Many people go to these events, and I've always shared this many times when people ask me, what is the goal? What is the overall goal, right? I say, I want them to walk away with one thing, to take action. Because I know what it's like to go to this huge experience or conference and, you receive all this information and then you don't do anything. And then you're like, oh my God, that was such a great event. Right. But we've been so just intentional about making sure people join the Facebook community. As soon as you get your ticket, people get access to that. But also like staying connected. So people will have an opportunity to connect with others by getting a networking card. So all of that is being in place. But, from your standpoint and perspective, what do you hope that women take away?
I share that thought, what you just said, as far as I don't want this to just be another conference. I am tired of having meetings and conferences for the sake of having meetings and conferences. And so what do I hope people take away? I hope people take away something that they actually can implement. And if you write down 10 things, realistically, you're not going to implement 10 things. Pick that one thing. And actually, before you get to the conference, decide what it is that you're coming looking for. Because when you know what you're looking for, it makes that journey, it makes your receiving a whole lot easier. So identify what is it that you're looking for. That's what I would challenge women to do prior to getting to the conference. Find out what it is that you're looking for, and then seek out whoever is in that room that can give you what you're looking for.
Stacia Williams, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. My pleasure.
You're amazing. You killed it. I'm like, we could talk for hours. Well, there you have it. That is this week's episode on Behind the Spotlight podcast. Hey, do me a favor. If you found value in this episode, I love to hear your thoughts on your key takeaways. So please take a moment to share your feedback by simply leaving a review for this episode. This show can grow to bigger heights with the support of you. It takes 2 seconds to write a quick review on Apple or Spotify. Or better yet, how about you just snap a screenshot and share on your social media? Just don't forget to tag me so I can personally connect with you. Your insights might just be what someone else needs. So let's make an impact together.